Jenkins, the show that ran from 76 to 89, or excuse me, 79 to 86 on KABC out of Los Angeles. It's an ABC affiliate. Every Saturday night, Bill Jenkins. They couldn't do satellite back then because on the weekends the networks had that reserved for sporting events, so you would only really get national radio shows like Larry King Monday through Friday late at night in those days, and it was just coming into its infancy, national talk radio. This was years before Coast to Coast came in. Not that far out. Art Bell was doing his thing right at this point, but he was just local back then and mainly talked politics. But this here is from 1985. This is Lee Elders, one of the gentlemen who went with Colonel Wendell Stevens over to Switzerland to meet with Billie Meier in 78 after he had, been reporting having these contacts for a few years again. So I have my own opinions about the Meier case. They're probably not most people are. I think there's some truth to it, and I think there's a lot of lies to it too, but that's for you to decide after doing all the investigating. But I wouldn't get hung up on thinking that it was just for real or it wasn't for real. I think there was some truth about it, and yeah, I have my own opinions how they all ended, but that's for you to decide. So here we go. The volume is about as high as I can get. It's low and scratchy.
Welcome aboard. It's Saturday night. We call it Open Mind. And what a night we have in store for you tonight. It certainly is almost deja vu for me and for those of you that have been along on these little seminars we take every Saturday night. This trip into a new time and space and place. It'll be some old friends will come here. I remember back in that November day of 1979, the very first Open Mind show that I did. It was a new journey for me that night, and we want to pick up that journey. We talked about it a lot. It was the fascinating experience of a gentleman by the name of Billie Meier, one-armed farmer that lived in Switzerland, that back in 1975, 76, just for some reason or another happened to have an ongoing series of contacts with beautiful ladies who came in spacecraft and talked to him. They identified themselves as being from the Pleiadian star cluster, a planet up there called Hera. Well, the story was imaginative, but what was interesting about the story, and grew more and more interesting, was that it was supported by hundreds of photographs and also some movie footage, rock and mineral samples, alloy samples. Marcel Vogel, who was here on the show, Dr. Marcel Vogel, then with IBM, said he had never seen metal samples like that. He had never seen an alloy like that. He had never seen one that could be milled like that. He had a chance to sample those. So there were a lot of things about the Billie Meier story. They led us to believe that there was something very true about it. Tonight, we have with us one of the chief investigators on that case as it transpired, started some time ago, and I'm very delighted to have him with us tonight, speaking to us from Arizona, Mr. Lee Elders. Lee, welcome back to Open Mind.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Well, I'm just doing fine, and I'm looking forward to what we have going tonight, because I think tonight, Lee, we'll have one of the first opportunities to, as our good friend Paul Harvey would say, get the rest of the story.
Well, let's hope so.
A lot of things have happened with the Billie Meier case. When it first started getting national attention, it was exciting to a lot of people. And then a lot of people decided that this really wasn't true, that the photographs were all rigged, the sounds were wrong, and what went wrong? What happened? Why was that?
Well, that's a very complex question. Let me try to answer it this way. In 1978, when we first got involved, we had a lot of pioneering to do. And one of the first things we wanted to do with this case is keep it out of the politically charged atmosphere of ufology. And I think in doing this, I think we create a lot of enemies, and I think a lot of disinformation came down about the case.
Well, a lot of enemies in that you didn't share a lot of information with them as the chief examiners over there, or the people getting into it. That seems to be a lot of the input I had.
Well, that's absolutely correct, Bill. Although we did make overtures to one very large UFO organization. We asked them if they wanted to get involved with us. We asked their director. No. Reasons given. Distance over there. We don't have the funds to do it. We don't have the manpower to do it. If you want to pay our expenses, take us with you. We'll be glad to go. At that point in time, we felt, well, let's pass on this one. Let's go see what we can find out. This is what we did. Later on, when we came back, we started bringing evidence, hard evidence back with us. All of a sudden, they wanted to get involved. They wanted us to turn information over to them. Certain photographs, certain negatives, metal samples, things of this nature. Obviously, we refused.
Now, Lee, I know you're stuck up there in the woods in northern Arizona. I wonder if you could talk a little closer into the telephone there or something.
Let me try changing phones here. That might help.
Okay. We're speaking to Lee Elders, who, along with Lieutenant Colonel retired Wendell Stevens, were the chief investigators of this very fascinating case of Billie Meier. A case now in which there are a number of eyewitnesses. There have been some incredible things that have happened over there.
Bill, is this any better?
That's 100% better.
Okay.
You get an A on that one.
All right. So much for the headset.
Okay.
Now, where were we?
All right, so you were talking with one of the large UFO organizations, as my memory recalls, that was APRO, that they wanted to get involved after you started doing the spade work.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Well, you know, going back to that beginning, let's go back in a proper manner here. First of all, Wendell Stevens, retired Air Force colonel, been chasing UFOs for some 30 years. He approached us in 1977 and asked us to get involved with this case in Europe. Approaching us, meaning approaching Intercept security firm that I own. I asked him, why did he want us involved? He said, well, I want professional investigators. We were honored at the time, but we were not interested. At that time, we were dealing with a lot of multinational clients. And our feeling was, you know, the field was so stigma-ridden that we really didn't want to get involved. Wendell was persistent. He went over, he came back. I noticed a big change in him. And at that point, we decided to throw our hat in the ring because he had brought back a lot of hard evidence. And this excited us. So then we jumped in. We got involved. Our first trip was April 1978. My wife Britt and I, Wendell went over, spent 5 days there. I was impressed by Meier, but I still wasn't convinced. I felt that maybe the guy is hoaxing it, but how is he hoaxing it? So at that point in time began about a 2-year search, my own search, to try to determine if this guy was real or not. In the meantime, the UFO groups were really on our case real bad. They were claiming we didn't have any evidence. First they were claiming we were withholding evidence. Then they started claiming we didn't have any evidence. Then later on, claims were made that we'd stolen some of the evidence, meaning from Marcel Vogel, talking about metal specimens now.
Mm-hmm.
So it got deeper and deeper. Finally, got to the stage they were no longer interested in looking at any evidence. They became very interested in character assassination. At that stage, we pulled our horns in, Bill. We said none of this. We sat on the evidence, and we took our lumps for several years.
You know, I have a question that just comes to mind here, Lee. Something I want you to mull over as we take this a little break here. Here is a man who claims to be having one of the most, should be one of the most fascinating experiences the whole world should be deeply interested in. He's talking to astronauts from a very distant place. They are telling him many things about our beginnings, about our history, what's wrong in our society, how we can solve it. Have made offers to do a lot of things for us. And who is it that goes and investigates this? The governments? The Air Force? No, it's UFO groups. Why is that? If this is so, and he had that kind of information behind him, where was Uncle Sam? Where were people who could really, totally get involved and do a first-class job instead of, not that you didn't, but rather than flying saucer groups who happen to have an interest in that. I'm Bill Jenkins, talking to Lee Elders tonight. We're talking about the UFO in general, but certainly the UFOs from Pleiades in particular. Is it that the investigation of something which had all of the earmarks of being vitally important to the world was left to just private individuals instead of getting the kind of attention you would think that it should have?
Well, in the beginning, this bothered me as much as anything because, Intercept had a track record. We had worked with various government agencies in the past. We knew their modus operandi in certain areas, but we couldn't really see anything on the surface here that indicated that they were involved, that they were interested in this case. But today, 5 years later, we're finding out a lot of things. We're finding out that there was a lot of behind-the-scenes activity going on.
On the part of government?
We think so, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the metal areas, especially in other areas, especially the hard evidence.
The hard evidence, photographs, movies, rock and mineral samples, even samples of hair. Of course, the hair was like anybody else's hair, so you can't really say that was much evidence there. What's happened to all of that evidence?
That's a good question. One of the major problems let's go back to the beginning again. Right before Intercept got involved, I told Wendell, I said, look, if we're going to get involved, we definitely want to control whatever evidence comes. We want to make sure that it is protected. We want security around this man. We want to protect him because at that period of time, he'd already had some attempts against his life. So,
why had he had attempts on his life?
Well, there were many and various reasons. There was one woman, Billie's never told us who she is, but he said later on she joined their group or became involved with their group. But she tried to shoot him. She felt that he was part of a satanic situation that was developing around the Antichrist. She thought he might be one of the Antichrist because of the seven sisters, the Pleiadian Contact. Somewhere in the Bible it mentions, I think, that the Antichrist movement would begin in a connection with seven. And a lot of people thought for many years it might be the seven hills of Rome, might be Catholicism.
Well, seven is just permeating throughout the Bible.
Totally, yes.
It's built upon sevens.
Yes.
In a very majestic, mathematical way.
But going back to your earlier question, we did our damnedest to provide security on this, but we ran into a major problem when it came to the scientists. We lost several nags, inner negatives, because we had to ship them off to scientists. We couldn't get people to come into Phoenix and analyze the material. So eventually we had to begin to trust various scientists. And of course we made some bad choices in the beginning, some bad picks. And also, there seems to be some form of an obsessive energy or quality that develops when it comes to the Pleiadian case. People that get information, that receive information, all of a sudden feel that they don't want to part with it any longer. They don't want to return it to the original owner. Billy ran through this before we ever got to him. He had lost hundreds of photographs.
Souvenirs, as it were.
Pardon me?
Souvenirs of some sort.
Oh, yes. It's like a friend once told me who was in the gold dredging business down in South America. He said, you can take the most honest dredge people that work on these dredges. I mean, they wouldn't steal anything, but yet when it comes to that river and those gold nuggets start coming up through that suction hose, they see one, they like it, and they stick it in their pocket. And to them, it's not stealing. And I think that analogy held true for this case as well. They didn't feel they were stealing anything. They felt it was in better hands, quote unquote. So we ran into problems there. And when we did, we started losing material. We lost metal fragments. We lost negatives. We lost a lot of things.
Well, some of the pictures that came out of it, there have been great cries that they were fakes, or that they were models.
Well, You know, it's easy to sit back in the United States or any country and look at Volume 1 or Volume 2 and say, my God, those pictures they're great, they're beautiful, they're the best we've ever seen, the best photo evidence to date. But, and so many of the so-called, quote, experts said this, they said, but they're too good to be true. And I had the same feelings when Wendell brought those photographs in. When Lou Zinstock brought the first Meier photographs in to his house down in Tucson, Britt and I, we were staying there with him, and my first reaction, Bill, was, hey, these are too good to be true. We've never seen anything like this. So the point of the story is this. It's easy to second-guess things. But I went there, and I walked those sites, especially Hassan Bowl. I've been to Hassan Bowl probably a dozen times. And every time I've been there, the wind is blowing fiercely there. It's always cold, it's windswept. And how a man, or anybody, especially a one-armed man, could hang a model there is beyond me. I just rule that out. It was totally impossible. But then when you see the Beamship movie footage, forget it. These definitely are not models.
Well, in the Beamship movie footage, there is one section, and I mentioned that to you, that looks like it may be a model hanging on a string. Until you look at it closely, it doesn't behave quite like a model. Obviously, it was very, very windy. And this model also was causing the top of the tree to bend.
Right.
And that would have to be one heck of a model.
Well, that's a general consensus of a lot of friends that I've showed this footage to, and the same thing. Another thing you want to look at in that one segment, you're talking about the segment now where the Beamship flies around the tree and over the farmhouse, right?
Right, and a sort of a circular thing.
Right.
I realized that Simjasi, the astronaut, was trying to keep the Beamship in camera range at all time, for it was a photo opportunity for Billie Meier. But she was doing pretty good at that.
Well, there's a real mystery to that segment. I want to share it with you because very few people know this. In 1978, when Wendell brought back the movie footage, he brought back a copy of the 8mm footage. And we must have watched this 20, 30 times in his home, throwing it up on a wall or throwing it up on a screen. And never once in that year and a half period did we ever see that tree move with this scene we're talking about now. We didn't see, I never saw it move until the Japanese NTV arrived at the Meier farmhouse, and the Beamship footage is compiled of what they shot in Meier's living room off the wall with their video camera. And that was the first time that we saw the tree move. Number one, we were dealing with Billie's second or third generation copy. His original had already been stolen. But Wendell had like a sixth or seventh generation copy. And of course the resolution was so bad you couldn't see the tree move. So again, going back to photography, this is one of the things you have to look for, and that's how many generations down are you dealing with.
I should mention something here, Lee. We're talking about the Beamship footage. I know many of those in this audience have seen Contact from Pleiades, number 1, and perhaps volume 2. They both have been published by Genesis 3, which is your company. And now you are making available a 90-minute home cassette, video cassette, for the people, which includes the movie footage taken by Billie Meier, plus interviews with Billie Meier that the Japanese, the group from Nippon Television took. And you were kind enough to send me my copy, which I value, as I did Volume 1 and Volume 2. And they are fantastic.
You know what's unique about that footage now? You have to remember, Bill, we sat on that for almost 5 years. Now, we sat on it during the time when our critics were saying that we didn't have any evidence. They were saying a lot of things. But, as it is now, the timing is right, and we're now ready to release it so that the people can see what we've seen since 1978 and 79. And what's amazing about Beamship, the movie footage, is the fact there are 8 segments of movie footage that are all daylight. 1 segment of night footage. But But in each segment of daylight footage, there's a different scene. There's a different situation. You have one where Meier walks into the scene. The beam ship is hovering above. You have another, which is my favorite, and others, where this well-traveled highway, you see this beam ship hovering over. And you can count 4 different automobile traffic that travels beneath the beam ship as it sort of just lumbers there silently, just hovering above. So it's amazing footage. We've never seen anything like this before.
Well, I was intrigued by the footage where the beam ship just in a twinkling changes positions and then just disappears.
So was the Japanese.
Which is a part of the technology of the ship, as has been explained to us by Wendell. And I think you went in that with us one night. We also had an explanation given to us by Edwin Slade, who spent some time at Smith Rudy here about 6 weeks ago when he was with us. And there you can see in these tapes that actually happened. So you're making it available for home video consumption, VHS or Beta?
Yes, we are. It's the only UFO, and we don't like to use that word UFO anymore.
And they're IFOs.
I think IFO is much better because they identify themselves. But we are making it available to the public to let everybody decide for themselves whether this is a model or if it's for real. And I think that's the key thing to this whole case, because I think a certain percentage of the public will always feel that it's a hoax, and another percentage will always feel that it's real. We've seen these percentages work for 5 years now. And one of the reasons we're releasing this is you decide. In other words, after you see it, you decide. And that's all we're asking.
Well, one thing, it seems to me, for it to be a hoax, that Billie Meier, the little one-armed farmer in Switzerland, way outside of Zurich there, would have had to have been able to access special effects studios that are at least within range of what we have here in Hollywood. And there aren't any over there.
And not only that, Bill, I mean, we're talking 10 years ago.
Right.
We're talking 1975 and 76 when he gathered most of the hard evidence. And, you know, a lot has happened since 1975 and 76. Today, we can look at the shuttle, for example. We know that they're creating metals in space and crystals. So that's no biggie. But in 1975, it was. I mean, a cool fusion process for metal. Come on. And this is what blew the scientists away.
It was a cold roll way of making an alloy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how or why we should do anything like that.
That's right.
There's some question about whether there was calcium in it or not.
There were traces. There was also thulium. And this, I think, really disturbed Vogel more than anything else. I just finished editing our next tape, and it's called Beam Ship the Metal, and we're releasing the metal analysis, and most of it was footage taken at IBM, when Vogel was with IBM in his laboratory there. And most of it is microscopy work combined with interview with Yowie. And it's fascinating because this first piece, Vogel remarks over and over, he cannot get over the purity of this material. Highly crystalline material in metal. Unheard of. Why would anybody want to do that?
And it was a great deal of lead and copper and brass and things that you wouldn't think would be in a flying machine, but all great conductors of electricity.
Yes.
Very fascinating stuff. And we have a lot more for to go with you. We're just getting started on Open Mind tonight. With me is Lee Elders speaking to us from Alexandria 2. And Lee, I think they have the beam ship tape there. In fact.
I think they do, yes.
And I don't think they can keep it because everybody wants to see it.
I hope so.
If you wanted to get it, what do you have to do? Can we buy them from you?
Well, one of the things now, we're getting so close to Christmas that we would suggest anyone wanting this tape or the metal tape, just write to us. We're in Arizona. Is it all right to give the address here, Bill?
Yeah, we're going to do it officially later, but you can go ahead and do it now.
Well, it's real simple. Just Genesis 3. Genesis is the distributor of the tape. Genesis 3, Post Office Box JJ, and that's Munns Park, Arizona, 86017. and we'll try to get it to you by Christmas. If you send us a check or a money order, either way.
What is it, 59 now? 59?
$59.95, yes.
$59.95. And we'll have those addresses for you as we go on. I thought we might take just a moment here, if you don't mind. You sent me a fascinating piece of audio tape, and I want to share the sounds of the spacecraft. And Lee, I'd like for you to set the scene of what we're going to listen to here.
Okay, the setting is 1982. The sound analysis is one of our last priorities, Bill. We had already we'd spent about 3 or 4 years on the photos.
But this is radio.
Pardon me?
I said, but this is radio, sir.
Right.
The sound analysis is important to us.
Yes, and we finally got around to it in 82. There had been some preliminary work done by Delatoso and others, but in 82, we took it into Los Angeles to a laboratory there, and we had 2 gentlemen really look at it close on their equipment. And coming up, you will probably hear my wife, Britt. She was present, and Wendell Stevens, and Steve Ambrose, and Niels Rognerud.
What lab was this?
This was Excalibur Studios in North Hollywood.
All right. So you're there, and it's this just sound tape you're working with that Billie Meier had recorded.
Yes.
And
this is variation. This is the second tape that he had made. The first tape was about 40 minutes. It was on Variation 2, The Craft, and this is on Variation 6.
It's interesting as this contact went along with Billie Meier that they kept coming up with new models of the spacecraft all the way through.
Well, to an investigator, this has to blow you away, because every time we'd get this guy in one arena and think we had him surrounded, like still photography, he would jump into another arena. He would take us there like sounds or metal.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a never-ending chase. So, anyway, it was a fascinating experience, and coming up with this tape.
All right, I want to share this moment with you as you're listening to the investigators themselves, as well as sound engineers, dealing with the perplexing things that they are seeing on their scopes as they listen to the sounds of the Variation 6 Pleiadian spacecraft.
Yeah.
Seems to take 6.
It's very random. You see this. There are maybe 20 predominant peaks. Basically five to 10 different frequencies registering on that. I mean, major, which is, if you count the major ones here, that's basically what you got.
At this time, but we get more later when it goes into another mode, right?
Yeah, the mode is changing. We seem to have some point in time the lower frequencies, and this is simplified down to action.
We have to put that down.
Marker.
Action.
We have two pieces of equipment. One measures the signal we're listening to in the time domain, the top one here. And the bottom one is measuring the frequency components of the signal. And as we can see, it's changing. But on the top and bottom, the small instrument on the top here measures the main frequency component on the signal. At the moment it's around 1,000 cycles per second, which is right in the middle of your voice spectrum. Now there we had a very pure tone with very little added noise or other harmonics.
But it's still it's an alignment of several tones. It's not as though it's just like there's an alignment of maybe 10 different tones.
There it is again. What does that mean?
Well, all those spurious tones that you were getting before,
How about there?
all right, are tuning and aligning to the same frequency, or not exactly the same frequency, but near enough that it's not as though those different frequencies are falling out and one is coming through. They're aligning. You have it. See, you understand what I'm?
Yeah.
It's not as though maybe before you had 10 different frequencies at random, and then all of a sudden 9 dropped out and you only had 1 left. What's happening is the 10 different frequencies are converging on one simple frequency, which is, I find very interesting because
changes that you've got on the spectrum analyzer. What is it telling you?
Okay, let's pick a point here on the screen. Let's pick that point there. You see how the level of that point is changing, it's going up and down.
So you can see that there was a great deal of interest that was being demonstrated by the sound engineers as they heard these sounds that Billie Meier recorded of the...
And that's the end of the first part of it. Okay. So
later.
there we
And he
go.
said there certainly aren't any synthesizers that have oscillators that are that many, and can be randomly tuned to that many different type of frequencies. Another thing is they found out that one frequency that remained stable throughout the entire testing was, well, they compared it to the Schumann resonance factor.
I was
That's the
just gonna
natural
say.
frequency of Mother Earth. Which brings up a
7.85
very interesting question.
a 7.85 hertz wave that stayed consistent all the way through.
Right.
And so it just kind of adds a little sauce for the goose here, doesn't it?
Well, there's something else, too, that I don't know if you're familiar with or not, and I'd like to get into it with you without naming names here. It is very sensitive information, but...
Can you hold that?
Sure, be glad to.
Well, we take a little break at 15 minutes away from 10 o'clock on a Saturday.
Okay, in 1982, we did the analysis you just heard. In 1980, we shipped the sound tape of Variation 2 to a friend, Rob Shellman, who came to us in 1979 through APRO. Rob was in the Navy. He was stationed at a naval base on the East Coast. At this base, they had a computer where they carried what they call sound signatures within the computer. It was primarily used for identifying various sounds in the ocean, such as submarines. They ran these sound testing. Now, going back to your point, here we've got a one-armed man, handicap, 6th grade education, handicap. And he, if he's hoaxing it, he's fooling us at every turn. Not only is he fooling us, but he's also fooling science.
He's fooling our most sophisticated computers.
Exactly.
Well, he is really quite a fella, isn't he?
He is a great guy, warm human being. He's never been into this for personal gain. Now, you're talking to a man here that spent many hours with Billie Meier, many days. Our whole investigative team spent almost 300 days living at the farmhouse over a period of 5 years. And we never detected any trickery. We never uncovered anything smacking of hoax.
Well, I think it's interesting in watching the tape that you are now making available to the public. Yowie does interviews Billie Meier, and you walk with Yowie and Billie Meier to the various locations there in Switzerland where so many of these sightings were made. And you just can't help but fall in love with him. He's so warm and he's so gentle and he is so real. And he seems a little bit perplexed why people are having difficulty in understanding what he's trying to tell them. You feel for him, you really do.
Well, that's what's amazing about the man. Now, I'm not a UFO expert. I was never into UFOs prior to this case. Sure, I believed in them. I believed that other life was possible. But Intercept definitely was not a UFO investigative company. When we got involved with the Meier case, as I say, for 2 years we tried to figure out how he was hoaxing it. But we finally gave up because it became easier and more practical to believe that it was actually happening than it was if he was hoaxing it. It would have required too much money, too many accomplices, too many unexplainable situations such as the metal. How did he produce that? And other issues. So
I think the story of the hoax would be greater than the story of the contact.
Oh, I agree. Definitely.
The folks are beginning to line up on the phone. I know they have questions. I have found over the years, Lee, they're far better interrogators than I am.
Okay.
And I just become a traffic cop. I know that there are questions about the Billie Meier case. I'd like for you to kind of limit them with Lee, if you will, to the Billie Meier case, what is being said there, the hard evidence. If you want to ask about the tape, certainly any of those things. We will play some more of this sound tape for you, so if you missed it the first time, won't get it the second time, get your tape recorders rolling as far as that goes. And we'll get to your calls in a second. Let me give you the number. Los Angeles, 5 ground still to cover about the Billie Meier case, contact case with people from Pleiades, and we have just the guy to answer those questions on the line. He's Lee Elders, and I believe we have Roger is up. Roger, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. The question I'd like to ask is, what book or what material is available as to the lessons that Billie Meier received from these people as to what we should do on this earth to get ourselves out of our mess?
Good question, Roger.
That's a good question. There were some contact notes made of the case, but those have not been translated in their entirety as yet.
He did them in German, as I recall.
They're in Swiss German, yes. And some of them have been translated to English, but are not enough at this time to warrant a publication. Also, I might add that we're under contract now. There's an option on this material, and we cannot release anything for another 2 years. The reason? There is currently a mainstream book being written on the case, and it should be released within 12, 14 months.
But it does go into, Roger, to answer your question, what the Pleiadians see as our plight. They have enormous suggestions for us in where we should be going, and it really starts at home.
Oh, sure, yes. That's the... each individual.
That's right. You'll find a very metaphysical ring to a lot of the things that they have to say.
Right. And one of the key issues that we utilized in the movie footage video was the fact that Meier was talking about balancing the material with the spiritual. And when you really think about that, I think that's one of the key ingredients necessary today, is to try to balance those two. Right. Does that answer your question? Well, it does. I just was hoping there'd be something out now. Do you know of other sources, which have the same message probably from other ways? Because let's face it, this stuff's coming from a lot of different ways. Oh, no question. I think there's a lot of individuals channeling various information. Right. I've heard of one up in the Seattle area. The name escapes me. They're channeling information on how to help this planet, how to help mankind. I think that's the bottom line. Yeah. of what this whole thing's about.
Sure it is.
We're in trouble. This planet's in trouble. We know this. Now, what can we do about it? Not what can they do about it. What can we do?
No, we've got to do it ourselves.
Right. You're absolutely correct.
Well, it's good to hear this, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Roger. Appreciate you getting in on that. And we have time to get you started, Bob. Go right ahead.
Okay, Bill, thank you. I have a question for Lee. It has to do with the beam chip video.
Yes.
An hour into the, by the way, which was quite excellent, and I enjoyed it very much.
Did you see it?
Pardon me?
I say, do you have a copy?
Yes, I do, Lee. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
An hour into the video, you showed a tree that was struck by a laser, and shortly thereafter, Billie Meier mentioned a cosmonaut by the name of Menorah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this name?
Yes.
What can you tell me about this cosmonaut Menorah, if anything? I have a real personal, real good reason for asking. And,
let me say that.
Well, let me say that
okay.
there is our music. You want to hang on
Sure.
the line there, Bob, while we all
Maybe a good time to cut away now.
have a break. We've got a couple of hours more to go to discuss.
Yeah, that one is a big flop. Alright, we'll try next time.